Hello and welcome to our London Rising panel discussion on the future of the British High Street. I'm Chloe Street, fashion editor of the Evening Standard, and I'm joined today by Jane Sheperdson, former Topshop and Whistle CEO and now chair of fashion rental platform MyWardrobe HQ, and Mark Robinson, co-founder of property company Ellandi and director of the government's High Street Task Force. Thank you both for joining us today. The last year has been an incredibly tough one for the British High Street. We've lost 17,500 chain stores, and fashion in particular has been the hardest hit. Was COVID the final death knell for big brand stores, do you think, Jen?
Well, I think there's no question that COVID accelerated the demise, probably by about 5 years or so, I would say. But I think a lot of the retailers that we've lost recently, we were probably going to lose anyway, but through a combination of factors. Partly because ever since online shopping evolved, it's become incredibly expensive for stores to do online shopping very well, and also to maintain a large sort of portfolio of bricks and mortar stores. It's just too expensive. They can't really compete. I think also there's been a sort of a real lack of creativity, perhaps, in this sector. That sort of, I don't know. It seems like it's sort of been standing still for a while, and we need to move it forward. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, and I absolutely don't think that physical shopping is going away at all. I mean, I think there's still too many people who really love it and love the sort of social aspect of it. But I do think that we need to do it differently, and I think there are enough signs that this is starting to happen both on local high streets and in sort of other places in the world, that there are things that are happening that are going to change what we had before, but are going to bring us something that's equally interesting and exciting and perhaps a bit more experiential.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a big moment and an opportunity to rebuild and reimagine our high streets. What would you like to see happen, Mark?
Well, look, I couldn't agree more. The problems in the high street predate COVID. The task force was set up as a result of a report in 2018. And I think, let's embrace change. And without COVID, we were in danger of being a bit like a boiled frog. You don't realise how bad it's getting until it's too late. But at least COVID has made the challenges to our high street very visible. And we've now got to collectively take action to reinvigorate our places. And everything that I'm seeing is this has caused a real catalyst for people to come together to try and create and see a future which is much better for our high streets. Because let's not forget, one of the problems is we'd fallen out of love with them. We'd created these clone towns that people talk about. There was nothing exceptional happening. So, retail isn't dying, just poor retail is dying.
Absolutely. It's also facing increasingly stiff competition from fast fashion behemoths online. How do you think we ensure bricks and mortar stores move away from the stack 'em high, sell it cheap model, Jane?
Well, I think the customers are going to demand that. I think there are some examples of retailers who are already doing this very, very well. I think if you look at Selfridges, for example, they offer a wonderful kind of in-store theatre, as well as constantly bringing in new brands, as well as sort of highlighting their green credentials and their move towards sustainability. They make sure that there's always something there for you to go in and to experience. So you have to actually go to the store. I think that really, I think that customers are just not going to shop these stores where they just pile up the merchandise, because why should they? They can just as easily buy it at a click of a button, and it's a lot easier, and they'll probably get it a lot more quickly. So I think that people will vote with their feet in a sense, and I think what I'm certainly seeing is a move from the online players into bringing in a sort of showcase bricks and mortar store that shows the best of what they can do, but combined with maybe a workshop or maybe some kind of social event, maybe a little bit of art thrown into the mix, something that's sort of interesting and exciting that helps them to build their brand and lets us see exactly what kind of a brand they are in real life, if you like, as opposed to just on the screen. And I think that's really exciting. I think the more we see that, I think that rents will have to come down for people to be able to afford to move into these spaces. But I think that once that will start to happen, we'll see this shift, I think.
Yeah. Can you give an example of one of those online players that you've seen hit retail?
Well, it's more in the US that I've seen it. In fact, I was in New York just before the pandemic, and there are a number of stores that are sort of doing a showcase experiment. Like one of them's called Showfields, one of them's called Neighborhood Goods. Actually, Everlane and Third Love are doing the same thing, and they're sort of just opening a store really to give people a sort of immersive experience so that they can really understand and grow to sort of love their brand, I suppose. And they're attracting people who want to sort of show this stuff on Instagram or TikTok. But they're kind of social spaces as well, and allow people to sort of gather, and there's books and there's lifestyle, and it kind of just throws everything up in the air a little bit and makes it a bit more fun.
Let me tell you a lovely little London story. So it was my 50th birthday last week, and I'm one of these rare middle-aged men in property who actually does like shopping as well as being involved in it for a living. And my wife bought me a day with a personal shopper. So thank you to Sarah at Sartoria Lab who took me out for the day. And one of the places we went to was a pop-up shop just off Carnaby Street, which is run by Wax London, which is a direct-to-consumer store. They've had some concessions in John Lewis, I believe, but mostly they sell online, mostly online to the States. And this is the first physical store they've taken. And I just got talking to the guy. And the guy, Richard, hello, Richard, was in the store. And he was loving the experience of actually being in store and meeting his customers in real time and seeing how they try on the clothes and seeing how they react to his clothes, which he would never have got online. So, this is happening in London. It's happening now, and long may it continue. And Jane's absolutely correct. Some of this innovation is going to be driven by the fact that owners of retail real estate are going to have to get used to the fact that A, rents will never reach those levels again, and B, it's not about the rent you achieve, it's about the vitality you create. And you create vitality by getting fresh brands in, experimenting, taking a risk, and giving them flexible lease terms, which, to be fair to Shaftesbury, that's exactly what they're doing around Carnaby Street.
And obviously, flexible leases and pop-up spaces, companies like Appear here are amazing for smaller brands. What else do you think it is that we need from local councils and government to ensure that these, independent fledgling brands that have thrived in lockdown continue their momentum, Mark?
Whilst this is all about retail, I think there is a truism that we just have too many shops. So we need to lose the bad shops in the bad location, and they need to be converted into other things. And they need to be converted into things that bring vitality back to our high street. So let's have people living above the shop again. Let's have people working above the shop again. Let's bring healthcare into our town centres to bring people to places where where occupiers can then sell to them. So there's this whole ecosystem we have to create around our high streets that takes us just beyond retail. And once we have the people using our town centres and our high streets for this everyday activity, then the retailers can repopulate them and actually, build on that momentum of all the people being in the place at the right time.
For sure. And I think one of the very obvious spaces that need filling are these big flagships that are closing their doors, RIP Topshop and Debenhams, and particularly on Oxford Street, there's some very enormous spaces that need filling now. What is your vision for them, Jane?
Well, one of the things that I saw in LA actually was that the centre of LA had actually become almost sort of extinct, if you like. People weren't going there at all, and they took a whole city block and they opened what's called the Grand Central Market, which is like this enormous space full of amazing food stalls from all over the world. And it's become a destination, so people come down there. And I've actually seen recently that around that space, little stores have started to pop up again. So Mark is absolutely right. You put something in there that attracts people, that is something that's really kind of quite exciting, and other stores will then start to populate the streets around it. Because of sort of natural demand, I suppose. So I would love to see a Grand Central Market on Oxford Street. I think it would be just fantastic. I would definitely go there. So I think those are the sorts of things that would really, really enhance and actually would make London, what would be something that the people would come to London to go to this amazing food market. And we're really good at food here. So it would be a great thing to do.
Jane, you're going to be delighted to hear that that's exactly what's market halls are opening up in the form of VHS on Oxford Street. So this is happening. Absolutely.
Right.
We're going to see a food market in VHS.
Yes. And crazy as well. So these things are happening. So, I mean, again, I think we're all becoming a bit better at learning from other cultures. But what we do need to guard against, and one thing that does worry me, is that we're going to end up with a one-size-fits-all solution. Food halls are not going to work everywhere. They're fabulous, but they're only going to work in certain places, for example. We've got to find the true purpose of each place. And London's a fabulous collections of towns and villages, which we often forget. And what each individual little high street's got to find is its own unique purpose, and really go hell for leather after that to have its unique, distinct flavour and make the most of it.
I completely agree with you, and I think there has been such a lack of creativity in terms of the thinking around this, and it's a difficult thing to do. It is complex. It's not, as you say, it's not one size fits all. Little different high streets and local high streets will want something completely different to what we need on Oxford Street, for example. And I think it's a sad thing to see. We need to be much more creative. We need to take more risks. We need to find out what it is that the people really enjoy doing.
To be fair, you asked about what more can government do, and there are some quite significant changes to planning reform happening to allow owners of real estate and local authorities to be much more experimental about what they put into place. And there's a great thing called tactical urbanism, which has arisen as a result of the COVID challenge. And that's just trialing stuff, trialing pedestrianisation, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, do something else. So I think people have been a lot braver, and fair credit to local government, the mayor in London and lots of local authorities. They have trialled things, pop-up parks, taking out car parking bays and making that seating for restaurants. And usually a street license for a restaurant would have taken years to get. They've just been given them now to try and bring that vitality back. So yes, that tactical urbanism is a great expression that we should use more.
Yeah.
I think, that embedding of lifestyle elements in our high street is really positive. And probably for the brands that do remain, a lot of them are embedding lifestyle elements within their store, whether it's Lululemon doing yoga classes or, Toast is doing an amazing series of workshops. It's become a really exciting aspect of retail now that they're not just trying to sell. Do you think that the technology brands are now embedding in their stores with AR and VR? And is that an exciting and necessary part of retail's future, or is it a gimmick that people don't need?
I think at this stage we don't quite know yet, because I haven't actually seen it done well and done sort of in a way that I think, wow, that's amazing. However, I have to say, there's one company that I saw recently called Dematerialized, who are doing the virtual reality clothing piece. They're trying to attract both gamers and the fashion crowd, and the fashion crowd have been notoriously difficult to get to sort of engage with this. But I did an experiment with them where I tried on something. And wore it virtually, and took some photographs of myself and showed them to friends or whatever. And it was kind of almost there. It was almost exciting. It almost felt like it was part of the whole kind of fashion relationship that I have. It wasn't quite there. And I think these things like sort of smart mirrors and what have you, they don't really work for me yet. I think it's going to take a little bit of time before, but we're moving in that direction. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if it happens in the next year or so.
I think it's a truism that we're spending more money taking tech out of stores than we're putting back into stores at the moment, because everybody has rushed to these smart mirrors and everything else, and they just don't engage with people. People engage with people. You can get tech at home, so why go to a store for tech? It seems to make no sense to me. I think an interesting thing, one thing I don't understand is, as a consumer, people will cough their liver up online to Amazon or to Net-a-Porter about everything they like. Whereas if they're in a store and somebody comes up and says, "Can I help you?" It's like, "Oh, no, sorry, no, and they walk off. So tech for me is if they could close the circle between being more informed about their customer in store to have a more engaging conversation about what they want. That's a really interesting thing, I think, that operators of space could look at to sort of be more engaging with their customers, not gimmicky, really understand your customer better.
That's got to be done right, so it's not creepy, right? So that you don't walk in and have someone tell you everything about you.
Yeah.
Put a bit of weight on since you bought that chore jacket, Mark. No, that's not easy now, is it?
And just in terms of tech, this has been the year we've seen big tech arrive on the streets of London. We've had Google's Dear Local campaign, where they pledged to keep 1 million independents open by the end of 2021. And then more physically, we've had Amazon open their first supermarket, and just this week, their first hair salon. Are we hurtling towards a tech-dominated landscape of kind of Google groceries and Twitter news agents and Netflix cinemas? Or are they going to champion independence and be a helping hand in the future, do you think? Mark or Jane, whichever.
Jane first.
Can I just say, there's an Amazon store opening up the road from us, and it actually used to be an antiques market, and it's a beautiful old building, and they're going to turn it into a staffless Amazon repository, I suppose is the only word for it. And I honestly feel like going up there and throwing eggs at it. I just think it's just such a horrible idea. I mean, to me, it seems the worst possible thing that you could do. I mean, it's not exciting, it's not interesting. It's just going into a shop and doing what you could do on your screen. And it just seems like a really, really bad idea. I'm hoping that creativity wins over big tech. I think Mark's got a point that you need, your back of house and your logistics need to be super smart. Your data needs to tell you exactly what it is that people want, but it should be the real experience and the social experience that I hope will win out.
I mean, one thing we haven't really discussed in any great length, and it's probably not the most interesting thing for people watching, but making money is quite difficult in retail, period, at the moment. But online retail is very, very, very low margin. So I'm more interested in the motivation for some of these retailers, why they're going back into physical stores. Yes, it's for the media value of the store people talk about, and yes, it's for brand awareness, but also actually, if you can get the customer to do the work of coming to you and trying on the clothes, that's actually a cheaper way of getting the goods to them than it is sometimes doing internet facilitation. So there is value in real estate if the operator gets it right, and if, frankly, rents fall to make it sustainable as well.
So are you pro the arrival of big tech on the high street?
I'm pro the arrival of anything on the high street at the moment, because we've got about 30% two shops, and that's hundreds of millions of square feet we need to turn into something else. So,
and what are the key pillars of your vision on the task force of how to do that?
Well, the key thing that the task force is about is nothing to do with retail. So the task force is basically here to create an environment and a whole infrastructure of local leadership in place. So local place leadership. So we're all about building that, and we build it through building expertise, capacity, collaboration, and data and information. Because, places at work show great place leadership. I first moved to London nearly 30 years ago, and Marylebone High Street wasn't great. It wasn't the place it is today, but Howard de Walden took a view about 20 years ago to really make a difference and take some short-term, long-term decisions to create a long-term destination. That's place leadership in action. It's probably one of the best examples I can think of. And we need more of that across more places throughout London, throughout the UK. So we're about creating place leadership, not being prescriptive about what has to happen in places.
And do you think destinations like Marble Arch Mound are a way to do that?
That's a really interesting one, actually. I like the almost provocation of it. It's just such a random idea to build a big hill at the end of Oxford Street. But there again, people forget, the London Eye was supposed to be a sort of temporary pop-up attraction in itself, and it's now, a fixture of London skyline, and probably will be for decades to come. So who knows? If it creates controversy, if it creates a debate, that's got to be a good thing. And some people are going to hate it. But it could be there in 50 years' time. We just don't know. But let's give it a go. Let's roll the dice. Let's do that tactical urbanism.
And Jane, what areas do you think in London we need to shed some love on that could be really exciting?
Oh, I think I think some of the local high streets are good, but I think they could be a lot better, and I think they could be a lot more interesting. I think that a lot of them have just been sort of allowed to sort of, I don't know, they're full of phone shops and Costa coffees, and I think they could be a lot more interesting. And coming from a sustainable angle, where sort of I'm hoping that rental and certainly pre-loved becomes a bigger part of the sort of fashion narrative. I think those are places where you could have great little sort of rental pop-ups and things. And rental is something that, although it is an online, it's an online business. The physical presence of it is important because it is a new thing. People haven't really quite got their heads around it yet. And to be able to see these beautiful clothes, to be able to feel them, to be able to try them on, I think is important, so that you don't sort of think, oh, it's going to be like a jumble sale or it's going to be like a charity shop. You can actually prove to people that it's very different and it really is a luxury experience. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that coming into our local high streets. I saw a store recently in Kentish Town, the Kentish Town stores, I think they call it, and it's a group of people who are sort of makers, who make candles, who make home products, who make clothes, and also they've got a cafe which is very dog friendly. They also rent out pieces of furniture. It just seems to me like those are the sorts of things that locally would enrich our lives, perhaps, and make it a better place to live.
Sure.
We've still got some. I mean, we are talking about the lovely end of fashion and the aspirational, let's call it even middle class placemaking. There are challenges of London high streets. There's food poverty in parts of London high streets. Getting somewhere selling fresh fruit and vegetables is an important thing. And actually, to be fair, love them or hate them, and most people seem to love them. People like Aldi and Lidl are actually bringing food provenance into places that London high streets didn't have before. And they in their own way, they can kick off their own regeneration. So, as I said, I don't care whether it's tech, I don't care whether it's a German discounter. Places which have a need and places which can create a purpose and build on that are going to thrive.
And is there anything else you'd like to add? What are you most excited about on the future of the high street? Jane, anything else?
Well, I've just been sort of quite excited, even over the pandemic, as I've sort of looked at high streets where stores have closed and been boarded up. But actually, I've also then seen them kind of coming back to life again with a new purpose and a new business and new ideas. And that's happened relatively quickly, I think. And I think that shows that that there is a regeneration already happening, and it's just a question of us perhaps just making sure that it's as beautiful and fits the local community as well as it can do.
Mark, anything to add?
No, it's the passion in the engagement of local communities that have realised what they might lose if they don't really start taking an interest is quite inspiring. That's something across the whole country, and we've really got to harness that and make the most of it over the next months and years to get some real momentum behind this change that we really need.
Absolutely. Lots of change to come, but it's exciting. Well, thank you both so much. That was really interesting. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.